Our presentation today is going to be on moon landing. It was one of the most monumental moments in cinematic history. The fact that we were able to get to the moon and back while keeping the astronauts alive and documenting it with cameras is insane. We were forced to create new tech from existing tech. We had to change the cameras. We had to change all of it. We wanted to make sure everything worked because we had researched a lot about the moon, and we knew it was not a place that was friendly to cameras. I mean, you had freezing cold temperatures on one side, and you had boiling hot temperatures on the other. So you needed a really high quality camera that could capture all the nitty gritty parts about the moon. But you also needed a camera that wouldn't melt. Let's pause it here and back up a bit. Why video cameras? Why video cameras? Well, this is during the 1960s, and at this time, TV had become the staple of the average American home. At this time, there's 52 million TV sets, and that's about 9 out of every 10 households having at least one TV. And so, when the U.S. government's like, "Hey, we need to record this. We need to broadcast this to people," no brainer. We got this right here. And so, TV was ever the clear platform of choice. And so, once they had chosen this, they're like, "Okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to broadcast this?" They, on the service module, one of the many parts of the lunar lander, they had 4 79-centimeter diameter dishes that connected to, let's see, S-band transponder. An S-band transponder is essentially a multi-EMF wave transponder. What that means is it just transmits multiple frequencies, and so it could transmit communications, television, radio waves, all that stuff. It was basically the way they communicated and broadcasted the moon landing.
On this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Once that was in place, they had to put in some serious consideration of what anything extra they bring, what extra cameras would they put on there, because every pound was about $28. Doesn't seem like a lot. The rocket was 3 million pounds. Pretty darn expensive. They began working and fitting several cameras, not just one, on the lander. Working with the military, working with Hasselblad and several other companies to make a perfect cinematic camera for space. They wanted to make sure that everything that they recorded was perfect. And so they trained the astronauts to manipulate with their gloves on, because, the gloves. Have you ever tried using a camera with snow gloves? This was worse. This was worse for them. They were launched July 16th, 1969, with all the modules and all the cameras on there in a 363-foot tall rocket, propelled by a Saturn 1B rocket engine. Several, as a matter of fact. And at this time, despite having over 7.5 million pounds of thrust, it still took them 4 days. They were kind of bored. I mean, sitting in the same room with the same guys, yeah, you guys know it's kind of boring. And so, once they began their orbit around the moon, that was when they first started a broadcast of the moon landing.
Roger. And we're getting a picture on the TV.
Oh, you got a good picture, huh?
There's a great deal of contrast in it, and currently it's upside down on our monitor, but we can make out a fair amount of detail.
Okay, would you verify the position the opening I ought to have on the camera?
Stand by. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Neil, we can see you coming. Okay, I just checked getting back up to that first step. It's that isn't collapsed too far, but it's adequate to get back up.
Roger, we copy.
It's a pretty good little jump.
Buzz, this is Houston. F 2, 1/160th second for shadow photography on the sequence camera.
The shutter button and other controls were made larger for ease of operation, wearing the thick protective gloves of the moon suit. And astronauts were given suggested exposure settings for a variety of scenarios. Among other modifications, a special lubricant was produced that could withstand the huge temperature swings of the lunar surface. On the same article, NPR said, by the time of Apollo, Hasselblad and NASA were working hand in hand to produce a 500 EL suited for long duration flight and veracity of the lunar environment. For the 500 EL lunar surface data camera, a motorized film advance was added. NPR also said that the crosses can be seen on many of the moon photos. They allowed for correcting film distortion and helping in judging sizes and distances of objects.
John F. Kennedy committed to getting a man on the moon by 1970. In 1962, in a well-known speech presented at the Rice Stadium in Texas, Kennedy portrayed space as a new frontier for discovery and exploration. Apollo missions 8 and 10 pushed the boundaries in space broadcasting. The Apollo 10 broadcast was the first ever live color TV transmission from space. The weight of the camera was a big consideration and initiated an intense argument over whether it was safe to bring a camera. Which camera to bring and the deployment of a TV camera to transmit signals to Earth became one of the essential additional flight objectives of the mission. The Eagle spacecraft touched down on the moon's surface July 20th, 1969. Although cutting it close, Kennedy made good on the promise of putting a man on the moon by 1970. Walter Cronkite, who was anchoring the CBS network coverage of the Apollo 11 mission, was said to have been left speechless. Eventually, he exclaimed the sentence, "Man on the moon." Oh boy. He later explained that he wished he had said something more profound, but that's all he could get to come out. The overall quality of Cronkite's round-the-clock coverage had a lasting influence on public perceptions of the Apollo 11 mission. Cronkite, through these events, had transitioned into the title of the most trusted man in America. He was on air for 20 of the 30 hours it took for the crew of the Apollo 11 to complete their mission, garnering him the nickname Old Iron Pants. Walter Cronkite became the nation's educator for our national space program. The space program was something Walter Cronkite was passionate in. He started as a Texan sports radio broadcaster and grew his career from there. Originally, Walter Cronkite failed when it came to college physics. This ended up being the catalyst for his legendary broadcasting career. Through bravery and honesty, he made a name for himself in broadcasting and established high personal credibility. Many Americans remember the terrible day when Walter Cronkite took off his glasses, made eye contact with the camera, and while in distress, announced President John F. Kennedy's death.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago. Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left the hospital in Dallas, but we do not know to where he has proceeded. Presumably, he will be taking the oath of office shortly and become the 36th President of the United States.
Walter Cronkite had already established a reputation for insightful and courageous journalism during the time of the Apollo 11 mission. He traveled to Vietnam during the war to address the war's situation. He returned to America, contemplated his ethics, and conveyed his opinion to the world, which was that the Vietnam War was costly, terrible, and unwinnable. He felt as though the ethical responsibilities of a newsman required him to say the truth, regardless of what people might say or think. He traveled to Vietnam and saw for himself that the war was a stalemate. He exposed the falsely encouraging and incorrect informational propaganda by President Lyndon Johnson, as well as the Pentagon, which was that victory was right around the corner. Leading up to the Apollo 11 mission, Cronkite dedicated many hours to the study of space travel in order to learn anything and everything he could about the space program. Even though the concepts he learned about how space travel works was difficult to understand, he had next-level communication skills. This is proved by the fact that even American kids could understand what he was saying. Walter Cronkite did not have a teaching certificate or an elective political office. However, in spite of these facts, he still became an educator and a defender for America, especially within the broadcasting world. No one disputed that the sad news surrounding the Vietnam War was fake or inaccurate, not even the people in the Johnson administration. The Johnson administration and Walter Cronkite acknowledged the resounding truth that the vital role of news media was to disseminate the truth.
75. 75 feet. Guys looking good, down a half. 6 forward. 60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. Good. 40 feet, down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward. Drifting to the right a little. 20. Down a half. 30 seconds. Forward. Just. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ACA at a descent. Mode control both auto. Descent engine command override off. Engine arm off.
We're home.
413 is in.
Man on the moon.
We copy you down, Eagle. Houston,
Oh, jeez.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Woo.
Oh, boy.
Thank you. You're
Wow.
looking good here.
Boy.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. After I'm on, take care of the descent. I'll get the stuff prepared.
Wally, say something. I'm speechless.
I'm just trying to hold on to my breath. That is really something.
Very smooth touchdown.
Kind of nice to be aboard on this one, isn't it?
You know, we've been wondering what this guy Armstrong or Aldrin would say. He stepped foot on the moon, which comes a little bit later now. And just to hear him do it, we're left here absolutely with dry mouths and speechless.
Hey, it looks like we're mending the oxidizer now. Roger, Eagle, and you are stay for T1. Over. Eagle, you are stay for T1. Roger. And we see him stay for T1. Roger, and we see you venting the ox. Roger.
It's a great simulation of what you can see there, if you could see it.
That little fly speck is supposed to be a limb.
Gee, they must be in a perfect position, upright. We've heard no complaints about their position.
Just
They
a one,
landed right in.
just a little dust. Even that concern was
Yeah.
erased.
Wow. And there they sit on the moon. Just exactly nominal, wasn't it? Exactly as a flight plan all the way down. Man planning this thing on the surface of the earth. My golly. We're done.
You know, it's funny too,
Copy,
because
now 60, now 43. Over. Roger, we have it.
Yes, sir. I read Columbia on the high gauge.
Roger, we read you 5 by Columbia. He has landed Tranquility Base. Eagle is at Tranquility, over.
It's interesting that they're referring to it as Tranquility Base.
Well, good show.
That was a confirmation to Columbia.
Stop reset.